Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to David's Den. I am David. I make videos about Stephen King, his novels, his short stories, any adaptations that were made for film or television. And today we have a very special guest, the most adorable cutie in all of Ireland, who happens to also be a Trekkie. And those of you who hate me for all of my little Trek references in my Stephen King videos, although not one person has commented. I don't know why I'm saying people hate me. This is the Seán I've talked about. I'm pointing at my computer as if you're next to me. Hi, Seán.
Hi Dave, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. And anyone who ever says anything bold about Star Trek references can answer to me. And by that I mean, please don't come to me. Like, I just want to be everybody's friends.
Yeah, no, Seán's a really decent person, a nice friend, but don't with Trek. Seán is, in my humble opinion, the face and star of TrekCulture here on YouTube.
You're so kind to say that. I must say that we have a wonderful team that works
You really do.
TrekCulture. I'm just incredibly vain, so people do tend to see a lot of me.
So I developed a little crush, and then we became friends.
And I'm very happy we did become friends, and we discovered that we have our shared love of musicals, and we have, well, I will say a shared love of theater.
I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you if you talk bad about Sondheim.
So anyway, so obviously, I mean, the clue was in the video you posted that made us meet each other, but yes, we have a shared love of
a lot of things.
Stephen King.
Yeah, Stephen King and movies and film and theater. And speaking of, you have some other podcasts about movies and TV shows, but there are changes, so I don't want to just start listing them off because I'm not sure what you still have and what is on pause right now on hiatus.
That is such a fair description. Okay, so every week we have the Clone Star Pod. That's myself and my co-host Joseph Hurley. You can find that on all of your standard podcast catchers. It's on Spotify,
I'll put all
Apple,
these links
Google.
down below too. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you so much. That is Star Trek through and through. We've reviewed every season of Star Trek from the original series up until the last season of The Next Generation, and we're now, as of the recording of this episode, it is an interview series. So we just released our episode with Noah Averbert-Katz, who was, of course, in Star Trek Discovery. And we have a lovely one coming up in the next week, which will be a nice surprise. So that's one of the podcasts. So there's my own podcast, You're on Crack, Mate, which is on a slight hiatus at the moment, but will be back. My other weekly podcast that I host with my co-host, Dr. Carol Quigley, is called The Feminist Babysitter. This is something that came out of... You couldn't look at the news every day without seeing another atrocity committed against people who identify as female by people who identify as male. So what we did is it begins with an exploration of what we wanted to set out to do, which is bring education and awareness to different challenges that people who identify as female face on the daily, but also not in such a way where we spend an hour bashing people who identify as men. It's about educating, and it's about, helping people understand that sometimes learned actions and reactions, when you are not consciously doing these things, but you are still unconsciously, you might be presenting, harmful actions to people who identify as female. So it's available, again, like that, available on all podcast catchers. It is not an hour of being lectured at. I must say that as well, because sometimes we're just like I'm not sure I want to listen to this.
It sounds like a nice way into the topic.
That's it as well. And Dr. Quigley is like scary knowledgeable.
I've heard her on some of your film podcasts.
Yes. The funny story we always bring up is that I invited her on to do, would you like to cover a film? And she was like, we'll cover The Purge. And I was like, great, cool. I've seen that. And little realizing she meant The Purge series, as in all of the films. And I was like, it's fine. Yeah, I'm here for it. And then,
oh my God, I actually listened to the whole series.
Oh my God. Yes, anyone who can go and check out those episodes, check out Feminist Babysitter. I am also, so the last one, because it's on hiatus, but it will be returning, An Englishman and an Irishman Go to the Movies. That is on hiatus because actually my co-host is currently touring your beautiful country. And time zones are a pain in the hoop, David.
They are, and damn you, Ian, for putting this on hiatus.
Exactly, it's all his fault.
Okay, great. Anything else you're up to you would like to tell us about?
I have just started my little TikTok channel, which I recommend to everyone who wants to learn about Star Trek because it is a Star Trek facts channel.
Nice.
Because it's just little short snippets, and it's kind of I kind of think of it as like an introduction to Star Trek because Star Trek is an immense franchise, and
My God, the
thinking
world,
of going
yeah.
all the way back to episode 1 and watching it all the way through can be daunting. Obviously, I recommend it, but I'm trying to do little videos that will just kind of help people go, oh, that's what that thing is. And I try and keep it current as well. We have the new series is coming out, Strange New Worlds, so I've just done a couple
Yep.
of videos on characters from that. So that is going on at the moment. I have 2 novels available on Amazon. So
Yes, you
please,
do.
please check that out. I won't say inspired by Stephen King, but certainly inspired by his work ethic. Like
Oh,
incredible. I mean, I struggle to breathe as quickly as he writes books. Starting Stephen King can be daunting because
that's what this whole channel is about.
my goodness. I mean, so worth it. And I think we've talked about this. I've read maybe half of his, and even that's no longer accurate because since I started recording this episode with you, he's written 4 more.
Right. No, that's true.
But
That's true. Or at least pulled, well, 6, because we have the 2 that were in the trunk he's been sitting on for 25 years. Rage, for example, he pulled out of the trunk when he started the Richard Bachman name, and he started writing Rage when he was in high school. So that book was already almost 10 years old before it was ever published.
because he made the decision himself, fair enough, the fact that it's gone out of print, that he's let it gone out of print, like that's, I understand that he wasn't being censored. But I certainly understand why he chose to let it go out of print. It's not a badly written book at all, like by any means.
Well,
Compared to his other stuff, it's not as good, but it's still
I
decent
completely
piece of
enjoyed
storytelling.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of craft, it was really for me a little young writer saying, "Look how smart I am with allusions to pop culture and other writers' work," and he kind of called it out a little heavily. Which so let's segue into what we're actually doing today because this actually brings me to a point I wanted to talk about. Today we're going to be looking at The Woman in the Room. We are finally at the end of the Night Shift vlog series, and actually, Sean, one of my first ever Night Shift reading vlogs is me walking down the street and pausing the video because you called me, and that was right when we met. So you, like Sebastian, who is in Chapel Wait based on the first story and just did the watch along of One for the Road with me, are also kind of bookending this Night Shift journey.
Oh, that's
for me.
Lovely. That's lovely.
Yeah, so I think that's really wonderful. So there's we reread The Woman in the Room, both of us last night and this morning before this film, and we're going to get into a little more summary in a minute. But you were talking about the writing style, and I had mentioned how calling attention to how smart he is as a writer when he's young. And there are a few references to that in Woman in the Room. When I was reading last night, I thought, oh, here's, young writer Stephen King again. And then I thought, wait a minute, no. This story is so personal to him. His mother turned him on to horror and sci-fi. It was a collection of Ray Bradbury books and Lovecraft that used to be his father's before his dad kind of left the family when he was young, that he found in the attic that turned him on to this genre and that he then went on to write. And he was inspired by all of these authors. And the things that he's calling out are, he's talking about the cancer in her stomach, and he says it's like a baby in a Ray Bradbury story. There's 2 or 3 of these that I thought, oh, here's young King. Wait a minute. No, this is an homage to his mother.
100%. This was, I know it obviously it arrived relatively early in his career, and obviously it's in Night Shift, so it's quite early. But
this is one of the 3 stories that didn't appear before Night Shift. It was written and then first appeared in the Night Shift collection. It wasn't published, so it may have been written even as recently as 1978.
So
right,
it reflected like. He had sat with this for a lot of time because this doesn't read like someone who's still reeling from these experiences. This is someone who has, because obviously there's some parts of this which are autobiographical and some that aren't, we assume.
So let's take a step back and just talk about what the story is, because I feel like we're starting to get into a discussion that some people might not be aware of. So why don't you give us a little synopsis of the story, and then I'll dive into a little bit of the autobiographical elements.
So, the short story, The Woman in the Room, it deals with Johnny, who is caring for his ailing mother. Now, she's in the hospital, but as the story goes on, we see that she is very frail, she's very, very ill. It is a stomach cancer. It's a very lonely story. It is very much at this point in time, Johnny's entire world is the minutes and the hours he spends with his mother. He makes a decision as the story goes on, one that he, right up until he acts on it, he's not sure if he will go through with it, because he thinks can I talk spoilers, David?
Yes, full spoilers through the end of short story and then film as we go through it.
So she is in tremendous pain, and it's very clear she's not going to get better. The doctor that says I can send her home is just paralyzed. To keep her comfortable.
Right, she's itchy now because they blew out the nerve center in her brain so she wouldn't feel the pain from the cancer in her stomach. He's walking into the hospital where we start the story after she's had this procedure, and he sees what it's done to her, and that's the beginning of this story.
She is a bit like there in name only. She's still her, but she's, it's a when, not an if, when it comes to her passing away. She is not in control of her faculties. There is still enough of her senses left that she recognizes Johnny. Mm-hmm. She's able to ask him, or he offers her a smoke, and she says yes. She's able to take.
She's embarrassed. You shouldn't see me like this.
And there was there's an allusion as well to, she used to be this strong person who went through this with her own mother, and now she has been in the hospital so long, she's kind of, the paranoia has built up. She keeps her purse in the closet behind a bunch of other bags. And the description, the two-tone walls, the brown and the white, he says the only thing more depressing would be pink and black.
Hospitals full of pink and plenties. Or good and plenties.
And he, every time Johnny comes in, he leaves something in the car so that he's an excuse to leave again.
And can we talk about how beautiful the structure of the writing is? Because it exactly, that's a great word for it. So there's a break on the page where we are with Johnny in the hospital, and then at mid-sentence, it just changes to a different section, and we are learning the backstory. And then the next section is back in the hospital, and then the next section is him going to the car. Every other section is back at hospital with mom. But it visually gives us a idea that these thoughts never stop, whether he's at home, whether he's on the way there, whether he is in the hospital room with her, right? And it's almost Brechtian, calling our attention to the writing so we think about what we're reading rather than just getting lost in the story. And I think that's what makes it so compelling and horrific on a human level, because we see ourselves debating the same issue that Johnny's debating.
That's a really interesting, the way you're describing how he's bringing attention to the writing style, because the one feeling I had was sadness. The other feeling I had while reading this was I was very uncomfortable, as if I was seeing something I wasn't supposed to be seeing.
So I think we've skirted around the issue. Let's just go ahead and blatantly say it if you haven't picked up on it yet. Johnny has, Darvan, I think, Darvan complex, which were very strong, sleeping pills used in the 70s. And he is debating whether or not to help his mother with an assisted suicide, which she has not specifically asked for, but she has said, I wish I wasn't here. You brought up the idea earlier of always these excuses to go back to the car because it's hard to deal with mom. But then when he has the actual pills with him, it's step by step. It's, well, if they put a roommate in the room with her, I'm not going to do it. Oh, there's no roommate. Okay, if she doesn't ask for her aspirin that I've been sneaking her, I'm not going to do it. And then she asks for her aspirin. And then he gives her one, and she's like, these don't look the same. And she sees 6 pills in his hand and knows what he's doing. He says, it's stronger than aspirin, and I love the word idly. She says idly. Is it? So she knows what he's doing, and she gums them because she can't wear her dentures anymore. The autobiographical nature, and Sean, I don't know if you know this, but this actually goes back to Stephen King's childhood. He identifies Johnny as the younger brother in this, and in Stephen King's real life, after his father left the family, his mother moved King and his older brother David back home to Maine just like Johnny and Kevin, to care for her mother who was dying of cancer.
Okay,
So
I
this
knew they had moved back. I
literally
didn't
is
know about his
Stephen King's
grandmother.
story
Yeah.
with names and maybe types of cancer changed. People on the channel have heard me mention the Dollar Baby program a number of times, and what you may not know is, and I think you do, Sean, is that this is where it started. A film student that no one had ever heard of I'm still not quite sure who he is, Frank Darabont, I think is how you say his last name.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
He went on to do just little films like The Shawshank Redemption, I think it's called. And there's one
that
about
rip-off
this
of Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And there's one about some big guy in a jail cell, like the Blue Yard or something. The Green Mile, The Mist. Just little films that are listed as the #1 best ever on IMDb. Like,
to think that he gave us with Stand By Me, so Rob Reiner, between the two of them, they gave us easily the best adaptations of all of King's work, in my opinion. Now, and I realize,
and interestingly enough, not horror. I can't remember which podcast I was listening to. It was either the Losers Club or Dairy Public Radio. I love that name, Dairy Public Radio. It's fucking fantastic. But so one of those podcasts brought up that this was the first ever Dollar Baby short, and that Frank Darabont identified, of all the stories in Night Shift, The Woman in the Room. He didn't go with the sci-fi I Am the Doorway. He didn't go with the horror or grotesque like The Lawnmower Man or Graveyard Shift or even like end of world terror like Night Surf. He decided to go with, I think, maybe one of only 2 truly human stories without horrific elements. Well, the story themselves, what we contemplate morally, are horrific. But there isn't, an axe murderer or a hammer murderer, or there isn't, some sort of power, or there aren't rats, right? And then he found Shawshank Redemption, right? Another non-horrific Stephen King story. And you mentioned The Body as well, which gave us Stand By Me. So it's really interesting that this is what Frank Darabont latched onto, and he wrote Stephen King a letter. And he said, hey, I want to adapt one of your short films. How can I go about getting the rights to do that? And Stephen King thought, well, it might be a good idea for, student filmmakers to be able to have a cheap way to adapt short stories into short films. So why don't I let you have it for $1 and start the Dollar Baby program? So that was in 1980, and in 1983... I think I read 83. It was on the festival circuit, but IMDb has it officially in 1984 as its release. The Woman in the Room, directed by Frank Darabont, was released to the extent that it can be on the Dollar Baby program. There's a lot of rules about where things can be seen and shown. In fact, I'm not even sure I'm supposed to have this copy.
That's right. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. What? We're gonna put one of those beep things here for the resets. Then in 1994, there was another film that came out that we already did on the movie vlog for The Boogeyman, that were put together into a movie rental. You could get a Blockbuster, called The Night Shift Movie Collection, and it was just those 2. Total, it's about an hour long. The Woman in the Room is first. I did not watch it. I skipped it to get to The Boogeyman, The Boogeyman, so this is the first time I'm watching it. I wanted to be fresh. I'm really excited.
I'm so insanely curious, and because we both know Darabont's style from watching, obviously the films you've already mentioned. So it's going to be so curious to see what was already there.
A little background before we jump in and watch this. First off, so Sean, I don't know if you've seen any of my movie vlogs. The way that this works is this full unedited thing is a watch along for the Patreon subscribers. It'll be edited down for the YouTube movie vlog. As we go through this, we want to discuss both the craft of the film as a film on its own and as an adaptation. At the end, we're going to give it a rating. We've switched ratings from stars to buckets of pig's blood recently.
Nice.
You can do half ratings, and we will average those together for a final rating at the end. This is almost like an audio commentary track that we can stop during. So this is The Woman in the Room. We talked about years. We're going to get kind of a grainy VHS quality that was transferred to digital. Let's be easy on, quality of video here. It was something done in 1980. that was then
You mean we're not getting full IMAX?
Right. Can you imagine this story in IMAX? Feeling like you were in that room?
I don't
this
want
story
to
in
be.
VR.
No, thank you. Oh, God, even
Jesus.
worse.
I'm sorry, Sean. This morning I scoured the internet. I spent about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe even longer on IMDb looking for a Star Trek connection for you, and there is not one in this movie. But we've had a number of them through Night Shift. I did. I even went down to the script supervisor and continuity coordinator to see what her other credits were.
Well, look, no one can say you didn't do your work. So, all right, fair. And I thank you very much. I thank you for trying.
My pleasure.
But where's my IMAX?
We're tracking right now. Do you remember tracking on VHS?
This pan over. This is obviously all of her stuff, you know.
I'm wondering if we're at the house, because if you remember after the first division, it's him saying the house proves she's not living here anymore.
This is so clearly, how do I say this? It's so clearly her house, not his.
But the music is oddly light. That's a little different from the story, though, right?
Yeah.
It was more like he was looking through it and saw them.
Oh, no, yeah, I got that he was, that this was his plan. That
right from the beginning was his plan.
Yeah.
I got when he was finding the pills, though, he was just looking around the house. And this was casual. I knew that that's what he was going for, but not that he was like frantically looking for it.
I like the way he's just dumped them in the sink, because after none of them matter anymore, because after today, they won't ever be used again. None of these will, after this, if they all go in the bin, it doesn't matter. So you're right, it's a little bit, this is more direct. This is, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm here for.
I think that's a great for the audiovisual medium, though, us getting the sense of something's wrong, and then him not taking the medicine, right? Because if we don't know the short story, he opened it, he looked at the pills, and didn't take them.
If you've no context and all we've seen is this, you would be forgiven for thinking, okay, well, this guy obviously likes tablets or he likes pills or whatever, and he's looking for something maybe he's not supposed to be taking. But as you say then, well, hang on, we've just seen him scrabble through a medicine cabinet to not take a tablet?
And then the reason I paused it here is the first break after the hospital section. I guess second, so we're in the hospital, we're him getting to the hospital, then the break where we see the history on these pills. And then the visual break on the page is him going from the car up the elevator, stopping to read the safety inspection, stopping for the water at the water cooler, noticing everyone in the hallway. It's all these little rituals that delay getting to the room by 2 more seconds.
He actually looks a little bit like Stephen King.
I think I'm crying. I don't mean to in front of you.
It's from the story, right? She doesn't know she's crying sometimes.
Yeah.
I'd do anything to be out of this.
Don't say that, Mom.
It's true. I wish.
This is...
Okay, so we're getting a direct ask from her here, where it's on the last page or 2 of the story that he says, she has said this in the past.
They've portrayed her here, I feel, as more cognizant than, in the story, she's high out on the meds. And,
right, she's doped up.
Whereas here, they've done a very good job of portraying the paralysis. Because in the story she's able to raise her, no, not very much, but she's able to raise her hand.
Yeah, you're right. I think she's a little more cognizant here, but I feel like we're getting the conversation that was alluded to. If he hadn't already had the pills, it's almost like we backed up in time.
I felt when he was walking into the hospital, the way it was framed with his hands in his pockets, he looks like a man who, if not is comfortable with the decision he's made, he has made the decision. He's walking with purpose.
But the first time he doesn't have the pills yet. They're not with him in that first visit in the short story. He's gone and gotten them, but they're in the car.
In the car, that's what it was. I was trying to...
Because then we have a few weeks break in timeline, right? Because then the doctor starts saying, don't think about weeks or minutes anymore. Think about months. She is going to keep living. And we get that in the phone call he has with his brother.
Yes.
Right,
yes,
and he's saying, no, she's... she needs to be cared for, and Kevin wants to bring her home, and he doesn't want her with Kevin because he's not going to take care of her, and he just debates more and more, and then he brings the pills with him on that last visit, because I think we get 3 visits through the short story, but a few weeks goes by.
Yeah, I think I mashed them together when I was reading it.
I did too. I've read this, 4 or 5 times over the last, maybe 8 months. And yeah, I it took a little bit for me to realize that this wasn't all one visit. It's that, but I think that's what this does, is the structure breaking the way it does visually for us blends it together, and these thoughts are everywhere all at once, in all time and at all places.
And that's another thing for the story, is that even this aspirin, it's extra he's brought from home.
Yeah.
On top of the pain meds she's already taking.
I know it's hard to deal with, I know. But just come and see her, okay?
I am loving this slow push in during the phone call.
Right. For me, I'm getting the loneliness that he's feeling. I'm not actually going to judge Kevin for a second, but he sat there trying to convince his brother to come and visit their dying mother in the hospital. Now, and I think it was great that they added that line, I know it's hard to deal with, because the first couple of times you can hear it sounds like, oh, I won't get time off work. Oh, my boss won't let me. Yeah. And then straight away you get that honesty. It's like, I can't face this. Yeah,
I love the more anxious he gets and the harder that John has to fight for his objective to get his brother the more intense the shot is, right? It's a visual representation of his internal emotion. We're getting more and more inside and pure, raw, primal emotion rather than thought out conversation.
Absolutely. Like he's begging, even though he's very measured. This is a great performance so far, but he's very measured in how he is pleading both for help and for support. He said, it'll make her feel better, it'll make me feel better. Now, what is this?
Yeah, this
is not from the story.
They gave her a cordotomy yesterday.
Cordotomy?
Because there's something in the short story I love. It's a cordotomy. I don't know if that's how it's spelled, but that's what it sounds like.
Nice.
Right? Like, this is what the doctor said. I have no idea. Like, I think every time we see the word cordotomy, it's in quotation marks, because our narrator isn't sure if that's the right word.
And also, so we're seeing here that he is a lawyer for this prisoner. Now, I don't think that was said in the story, but in the story, he is aware and he's afraid of taking a murder rap. I like that this is kind of like, well, yes, I assume he is aware of the law.
Of course. And he talked about like a merciful death charge, I think is what it's called, rather than, an outright murder. But he imagines matricide as the headline in all the papers the next day. So there is a certain sense of self-awareness. But really, it's all about his mom, and he does what he can at the end, right? He wipes his own fingerprints off. Will they believe? They probably won't care. It's very interesting that we've made him a lawyer in this framing device. I almost want to say it's a glimpse into Shawshank, except it hadn't been written yet.
That's true. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think I could sell it to the jury. I bring up your experiences in Vietnam.
Yeah? Tell them I'm nuts because of what went down in Nam. Thanks, but no thanks.
Stephen King mentions Vietnam in Strawberry Spring. The Man Who Loved Flowers. I'm trying to remember if there's any other references. So I kind of like that he's throwing in Vietnam as an homage to the rest of the collection the story is found in. I
actually really like as well that... So obviously we can assume he's in for murder. They're talking death sentence, right? So we assume this guy's in for murder. This is not in the story. This is a Frank Darabont original.
Completely made up framing device, yeah.
And I like that, he is a killer with principle. Like, we could plead insanity because of your experiences. No way. I mean, like, I may be bad, but I'm not going to use Nam like that. I'm just like, and that's something that both Darabont does, because again, I think we see this again in Shawshank, and it is a Stephen King holdover as well. This idea of, I know this is from the novel, but the only guilty man at Shawshank, of course, is Red. Now that's from Stephen King, but just again another Frank Darabont thing. In terms of just whoever's watching this, Vietnam is so much more horrible than I think a lot of people certainly today know, and so this obviously being relatively soon afterwards, like it would still be quite fresh in people's minds. So for him to be like, I'm not using my experiences that way. And the other guy's like, you could.
Yeah, definitely fresh. And King was very outspoken against Vietnam when he was in college and after. So it's interesting that we're talking about Vietnam because I meant to say this before we started the film. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit when we were talking about our Broadway and our Trek love connections. I meant to text you when I saw this, what was it, like 3-4 weeks ago? I think it was the second episode of Picard. When we wake up in the, not the past, but in the alternate timeline. I forget the actor's name. I'll put it up on the screen. The actor who plays Seven of Nine's husband.
John Briones.
Thank you. He, I saw on Broadway in Miss Saigon playing the engineer, which is a Vietnam War era musical. There's our Trek connection for this movie. They talk about Vietnam and Picard and Miss Saigon.
That works for me. Absolutely, that works for me. Brilliant. Yeah.
Okay.
Well played.
Back to the woman in the room and the scene that doesn't exist in the short story.
I'm a professional. I'm a professional.
All I'm
It's the
saying,
pride in the
All
work,
I'm
right? Like
saying
you were
is
talking
I ain't
about
no
the morality.
sideshow freak.
I never said you were.
Then don't parade me around like one.
And this is all mirroring the film. If we think about him talking about the papers, don't parade me around like a freak, the matricide, right?
Yeah.
On the papers the next morning. You're up against a murder charge. So what we're actually doing is seeing him deal with the client who's dealing with his own concern.
Hell, he saved my life once. I owed him.
He saved my life. I killed him. Oh my God, that's the Ray Bradbury baby example. Aborting the mother that is giving the fetus life.
So we now know he seems to be a contract killer, using this comparison of being a soldier to being a contract killer, and the only time it ever meant anything is when it was
The mercy killing.
He was doing it as a kindness.
Note the
when she gets
shadow.
harassed, you look
He's almost
terrible.
in like hyper light on one side
swear
and
off the
so dark on
cigarettes,
the other. Like the
ruining
lighting
your
is
health.
showing the struggle. Well, we don't get this dream sequence in the short story, but I think, like we were talking about earlier, with all the stakes being elevated and everything being more immediate at the beginning. Again, how do you translate a short story that's mostly internal monologue
Exactly.
about making a decision?
So I'm going to say that I didn't love that. I think that it's not that it wasn't well shot, but I think it was melodrama as opposed to drama. We've been playing it fairly straight so far.
I don't mind the melodrama being that we're given his psyche in a dream. I appreciate the idea.
I definitely like the idea and that it's haunting you. I think we know it's haunting him.
I think if we had just cut it off on the wheelchair coming around the corner and he wakes up. Because
Yes.
then we're still in a decision. We haven't seen a decision be made. Because what we saw here was a no, I'm not going to do it, hug her, yes, I am.
Yes, I think you're spot on there. The image of the wheelchair was fantastic. Just a little bit like all I do is just pare it back just a little bit. But yeah, so I mean, hey, this is student Frank Darabont. He obviously learned some stuff before he made the #1 film of all time.
Right, the woman in the room. Oh, you meant The Mist.
In fairness, it's not a bad film. Yeah.
It's not. What does he call it in the short story? Her left hand was always her smart hand,
Yeah.
rather than dominant or...
Your left hand always was stronger than your right. Even when I was a
There
kid,
it
you had to
is.
smack me. Always use your left, remember?
Do you remember, one of my favorite parts of the whole story is nothing puts you in your place as a 12-year-old than being slapped with your grandmother's urine-filled diapers.
Like, on the one hand, it's like, that is child abuse to the extreme. But also, I mean, what do you even say to that?
You know, to her credit, they did come out of the wash basin.
Yes,
So
which
they,
is...
they weren't still
yep.
pee-riddled with his grandmother's urine. For those of you who haven't read the short story, he remembers this moment when he was 12 and was being a smart-ass, bad-mouthing. And what does she say? Your big mouth is the only thing about you that's big right now, so keep it shut until you grow to match the size or something like that.
And he says it took him 4 years to learn how to be a smart mouth again.
Yep.
I love that as well. And actually, hilarious, because obviously when you were saying that, nothing puts you in your place better. The poor people watching this who haven't read the story, the out-of-contextness of that, it's like, hold on, what? This incredibly serious scene and we're talking about getting slapped by a pee-filled diaper?
Well, look at the smile on his face, and he's talking about the left hand you used to slap me with. And the contrast, of course, in the story is looking at this frail woman who can't move her fingers barely, who says, I can snap my left hand, but I don't feel it at all, used to have this strength about her.
because every time that he sees her, he doesn't just see her in the bed, he sees every memory of her as well. And it's almost perverse that this woman who was as strong and is as influential is now so frail.
I was able to pull 2 full dish trucks with these hands.
I love that both of us just start nodding when we hear dialogue right from the
That's
story.
Johnny.
You want another one?
Yes. Please.
It makes it her. She's taking the responsibility.
And we get that sense in the short story if it's not as explicitly stated. She's asleep and he puts her fingers onto it in the story. This is so a joint decision here. The contemplative like push in again. It does mirror that feeling of the end of he goes home and waits for the phone to ring. End of story. We never find out the aftermath of what happened.
Well, I thought it was...
Thoughts. Yeah, give
Thoughts.
me. Let's break this down. Let's try to talk about it as a film on its own, ignoring that the short story exists first.
Okay, as a film on its own, I thought Johnny was well, without much competition, he was easily the best thing in it. He was very, very, very good. The performance was fantastic.
Michael Cornelison.
Michael Cornelison. So, yeah, I thought he was excellent. He managed to portray the good son very, very well. I feel ultimately, although we enjoyed the scene, the prisoner scene was superfluous. It could have we could have lost the prisoner scene altogether. In my opinion, now that's not to say I didn't enjoy it, but it did break that tension of
I
the
can
hospital.
see your point. I appreciated the break in tension because it gave us comedy and it gave us humor before we went back to this really heavy moment. And it was a way of mirroring the internal thought. It was basically the whole scene was symbolic of John's internal struggle.
It's very, very difficult to hold the mood for the entire piece. This didn't for me, but that's not as critical as maybe it sounds. I do like the way it was broken up, and really enjoyed the opening, the scramble for the pills, and I do love that. Basically, she was in on it. Because I think that's, and as you were saying as well, that's when we don't get the internal monologue.
Right, how do you translate that?
Because if you were looking, if you saw the opening scene in the opening scene and then the first scene of him in the hospital as well, in isolation, he looks like he's just trying to off his mum.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you get the rest of it and we see that he's trying to spare her the pain. But whereas in the story, you know straight away this struggle he's feeling, this pain that he is feeling, knowing his mum is going through all of this. The opening scene of the movie was just like, is he after the house or something? Or could be read as that.
Yeah, except he was specifically in the medicine cabinet.
Looking for the drugs.
It wasn't like he was casing the house for whatever else might be there.
True, but I thought that was it, because without that internal monologue, you only have the visuals to go on, and some of the way it was shot, it was just like, okay, well, I'm actually glad I have read the story, so I know he's not a serial killer trying to kill his mom.
Right. But I also think that that opening shot in the house gave us this feeling of we're not quite sure what's going on. And then when he gets to the hospital room and the first thing we hear out loud is "Ma," from such a caring place, it kind of puts into perspective what's happening. And if you don't know the short story, that's, I think, when you go, oh, shit.
So what are your initial reactions there after that?
As a film on its own, I thought the pacing was fantastic. I would never have thought this was done by a student filmmaker.
True.
And if I'm being 100% honest, I know that this started King opening it up to student filmmakers. I am not sure Frank Darabont was still a student at the time or like just out. I know he was still very young. This is his first ever credit on IMDb. So he has no other short films that have been officially credited to him. I thought it was shot beautifully. I thought the visual representation with those slow push-ins, and we had it, 3 times? One on the phone, one into that medicine bottle that was a little bit more surreal.
Yes, yeah.
and then one at the end that were just absolutely fantastic. So I thought the visual representation of what was going on inside, down to the lighting and the shadow on the good and bad, right?
Yeah.
Literally the guy who was killing for good in Vietnam and good for mercy, but then is going to jail because he kept killing after the war. And we literally saw good. It made me think of Alan Ball, actually. If you ever watch things like American Beauty or Uncle Frank, he's really big on that severe lighting, and I think it's all symbolic of the human nature being divided at times. The music was perfectly chosen. There were a few kind of hokey forced moments in the dialogue, but I think I could attribute that more to characters in awkward situations than bad writing.
Sure. Yeah.
Because
What
I thought
do
the
you
writing
say,
of this,
you know?
the prisoner scene, I think was beautifully written. My only problem is, like you said, that dream sequence probably lasting a little too long and going, okay, we get that he's troubled already. This was a great way to heighten the stakes, but now I'm over it.
I think it was, obviously I said about melancholy, it went a little bit too far into surrealism in what is one of the most stark and realistic experiences one can ever go through. There's a great quote that I remember from years ago, and it's, there is nothing so boring as grief.
Yeah, and that goes back to the discussion of time. She needs to stop thinking in terms of minutes and weeks, but months and years.
Exactly. And then the idea of facing the existence that we saw there for months and years, and then you have the question of, is that living or is that just existing? So that's why I thought the surrealism of the dream, I thought Darabont perfectly captured everything outside of the dream, that it wasn't necessary.
I love it
certainly
until
didn't.
That kind of end. I think it just needed to be truncated. Yeah.
Could have chopped it down a wee bit, little bit. And I wonder...
I just chopped it down a wee little bit.
Just chop it down a wee little bit.
I love you.
Love you too. Because obviously, not only does the dream sequence change the style of the piece in that we go from realism to surrealism, but it goes to handheld camera. And this is clearly Frank Darabont is running at Johnny and runs around him and runs away again.
I like that idea for the dream, right? We're experiencing the dream off kilter, just like
that
Johnny
it would
is.
be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So boil it down out of 5 buckets of pig's blood as a short film, independent of the short story. How would you rate The Woman in the Room?
I would give it a thoroughly enjoyed 3 buckets out of 5.
3 out of 5. You're a little harsher than I am on this one, I think.
3 out of 5. I thought excellent performances. I thought, some of the dialogue was maybe a little bit too on the nose. I felt, while I enjoyed the prisoner scene, it wasn't necessary. That's just my opinion. Just my opinion.
Right. We differ on that one.
That's okay. But
you're allowed to have your opinions, even when they're wrong.
That's absolutely, and that is all we ask for. My favorite scene, I think, was the telephone call. I think
was strong.
He absolutely nails it. Yeah,
it was strong.
Yeah, I thought so. So
how you went with 3. I would ditto everything you said, because you can just call me Patrick Swayze. Except for the scene being superfluous in the jail. I thought it was a wonderful use of symbolism and character.
Sure.
Personally. So I would actually go with 4 out of 5 buckets of pig's blood, which we will rate together and give The Woman in the Room a rating of 3.5 buckets of pig's blood.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm thoroughly pleased with that rating. I
am. I think that's a 75%, right? It's not good, it's on the good side of good and happy I watched it, but not like 100% perfect film, is how I always think of like my 3.5s.
I love it. I love that system, and I love that rating.
All right. Woman in the Room as an adaptation, and we take into consideration not just plot, but tone, theme, the ways that it may have been changed successfully for the medium, not just saying that wasn't in the film, right? Maybe it was a good choice to change it for the medium or a bad choice.
As an adaptation, I think I'm going to be slightly more positive than I was. Definitely. Because I think it's an excellent adaptation. I think that I would still have left the dream sequence out, but actually as an adaptation, I was happier to see the prisoner scene for the reasons that you said, that it's a great exploration of the journey we see inside. Because when you lose the internal monologue, you lose something from the story, so they had to sub it with something else. That's where I was saying, like, at the start, because I knew the story, I knew he wasn't a killer. The great thing I like about the prisoner scene is, I think Brian Libby was great in the scene. I think that story of like, I've killed, and I've killed, but I've only ever cared about it once, I thought was a fantastic addition to the story. I think it was great. Funny enough, I think Johnny is far weaker in that scene because there is a strength in him for the rest of the film because he has to be strong for his mother.
I would argue the character is showing a vulnerability in asking this question when this hardened criminal killer, for all intents and I would say he's hardened. I think he's a little nicer than that, but for all intents and purposes, knows exactly what he's asking. So there is a certain vulnerability. I agree. The word weak, I think, is right because I think the performance went a little to the weak side rather than the character showing the weakness.
Although, obviously, the reason he was there was to be a lawyer, you could have lost every line about the court case on Monday. None of it mattered.
Yes, except I think it almost put a deadline in his own mind about when he was going to do this for his mother. There's the idea that both of us are facing a deadline.
Okay, yeah, I didn't
we have to
feel
make a
that,
choice.
but I
Will
take your
you
point there. Yeah.
Choose to plead insanity? Will I choose to give my mother the pills? We have till Monday.
Okay, no, I like that. I choose to steal your interpretation, and I will say, well, actually, what I got from that was that they put a deadline on it, and that they both had deadlines together, or whatever you said there. Yeah,
Sean, that's brilliant. I never would have thought of that.
I think I'm actually. I am the best interpreter of all mediums ever.
Of all interpretations that ever interpreted. For interpreting.
God bless everyone who's still watching this. You're more familiar with the story than I am. I've only read it the once. So for you, as an adaptation then, how do you feel it went?
Oh, you're going with me first for the ratings. No, I was really happy with it as an adaptation. I kind of missed the back and forth in the timeline at the beginning but again, the question is, how do you translate the internal monologue, right? How do you translate that structure? And it is such a short film that I don't know if we jump back and forth in time, it really would have been clear, or if it was, it wouldn't have gotten too jumbled. So I kind of appreciate that he went the different route and added the scene about the prisoner to give us all of that. I do think the dream sequence went a little too far at the end, but with the stakes being heightened for the visual medium, I think it's a great choice. I just don't know if the execution was as wonderful as I would like it to be. Just for little things like Kevin being the younger instead of the older brother, and I know that was so important. To me, that rang so true in the story because I know it was autobiographical to Stephen King himself and his brother. We lost all of the stuff about he knows what's happening to her because they went through it with grandma. And he was the one that, found that grandma was dead in the living room with those little mirror on her mouth. So there are some little things I missed that I think would have pushed this into an hour-long realm instead of half an hour film.
Sure.
So I don't mind their deletions, but I think there's an added rounding out of the characters and the story that provides that I wish was there somehow.
Sure.
Considering tone, I thought it was spot on. And that prisoner scene gave us the humor and the comedy that we get from the internal thoughts that Johnny has. So yeah, I can't give it a perfect score, but this one I'm going all the way up to 4 3/4, and it is, I never do quarter stars. You know what, I'm going to do half just because it's going to be easier to round in my head because I don't have a calculator. So we're going to go to 4.5, and I'm really debating changing it to 5 buckets of pig's blood before we're done with this, but I think I'm settling at 4.5. How about you?
Well, I'm going to go with a 4. I'm going to go with a 4 for this one. Yeah. Like, for parroting a lot of the reasons you had, I do think we lose a little bit in the internal monologue, but I think we gain some of that back in the prisoner story. I actually prefer that he was the elder child because I kind of felt the weight sitting on him.
But your preference for that versus adaptation, that's not an adaptation of the story. That's just how you would have changed it yourself.
Yep. That's how I would have written it. So
everybody heard it. Sean's half star is back. 4.5 stars For the woman who
never
loves,
said a thing. Never
the
said
woman
a
who
thing
loves
about that.
flowers. Oh my god, I just mixed up two stories. For the woman who oh my god, I did it again. The woman
girl
in
who
the
loved Tom
room
Gordon
is getting between 4.25 and 4.5 stars. Something.
Let's
What would it
say
be?
it's a
4 3/8 buckets of pig's blood for the woman
Perfect.
in the room. You know, I think part of this too is I'm just blinded by the fact that we're watching Frank Darabont.
right.
Because I'm
I think
surprised that you were easy or harsher than I was as a critic. Maybe I'm just in a good mood today. I'm so happy we watched this. And thank you for watching this with me, Sean.
thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for having me on your wonderful vlog. It's a vlog, isn't it?
Yeah, we're calling this a vlog series for Night Shift because I'm doing more. I don't know, vlogs to me are more of like the off the cuff, we're just talking, and then I have my scripted videos. That's just kind of, I don't know if that's the right terminology or not, but it's how I kind of think of it.
That's what it is. That's what we're calling it. That's cool.
Yeah, so I'm so
thank
happy you
you.
did this. Thank you so much. I'll put all of your
pleasure.
links down below to all the podcasts, the TrekCulture, all of the social medias. That's where you can find all of my social medias if you want to follow me and the Crazy Cats across all of the platforms. If you want to support the channel via Patreon and get this full watch along, you can do that in the link below. And I will also link, there's going to be a ton of links below for
really is.
how to find this, the Night Shift collection with The Woman in the Room and The Boogeyman. And you can watch that movie vlog here, which I think is what, like the 4th or 5th in this whole story, maybe even 3rd. No, Jerusalem's Lot, Graveyard Shift, Night Shift are the first 3, and then I think it's Boogeyman. It's toward the beginning. It's the one that I had just talked to you and did the reading vlog down on the pier with the World Trade Center behind me.
Yep.
I think that's the Boogeyman. Yeah. You come in through this whole Night Shift vlog, Sean. You've been there, which is basically our entire friendship because I started reading Night Shift like a week after you and I met.
That's very true. Yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah.
Your frankly bonkers and yet wonderful plan to do one for every story in Night Shift, and fair play. Fair play.
I'm not doing this for the other short story collections again. I don't have the time or the energy to do this again. I think I'm gonna do audio commentary tracks rather than full watch-alongs.
That's not a bad idea. Skeleton Crew looking at you.
Yeah, Skeleton Crew I think is the next one. Anyway, thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone. I will see you guys next time.